explain what happened, and then we'll proceed.
My wife's.
Marshmallow. This is the marshmallow, the square one, right?
That's the marshmallow. That's pina colada, root beer.
Corey, please.
Never mind.
Make sure.
Yes, we'll have our chocolate pudding afterwards.
It's only the second time I've had to use it.
I use it every Tuesday.
I think I should start eating some of this while I'm here, right?
Okay, we should be now engaged. There's the red light. Yep, the red light's up there with the camera. We had a shutdown, and I don't know if it's part of a reboot for software update that it seems to go through that, but hopefully it shows everything on my computer that we're up live and running again.
Okay, thank you, Corey.
Chair, I was going to ask at the beginning of the meeting, I know we introduced a lot of the new people that are here with us, but I was wondering if Corey could tell us who this new person is with us today. I don't recognize him.
It started out as the November task, became a little irritating, and so I was suggested to phase it out. So I'm in a phase out program.
Well, nice to meet you.
It unfortunately shows you how old I really am.
Okay, back on the agenda.
Sorry.
The item before us is consideration of the proposed conceptual site plan and conceptual subdivision for the cottage on corner townhomes, formerly Belling Townhomes, multifamily development consisting of one building, 6 units on property located at 323 East Pages Lane. I turn the time over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the recent past, you've seen the idea of this concept. Mr. Balling came before you. He owns this piece of property. It's been the Balling Engineering facility for a number of years. Fortunately, maybe for him, unfortunately for us, we have a local business deciding to move on and to find greater places to engineer in a different vocation, I guess, or avocation now. But he came before the city and petitioned for the rezone. As you recall, it came before you as a request for residential high zoning. That did go on to the city council, and through a healthy debate process, eventually the property was granted a rezone to residential medium. And so Mr. Balling has submitted his first step in the development process is to look at a residential medium development. This would be a townhome design, an L-shaped building is functioning on the property. As you recall, his office is on the southern piece, and he has the large open area between the play area or the green space of the LDS Church to the north and his lot. He owns both of those, and he'll be redeveloping that entire piece. Just by way of disclosure, we're here in a conceptual review to give the feedback like your earlier item. The plan here on this application, though, is to begin the conceptual site plan process as well as the conceptual subdivision process. So those will tag together, and he plans on, if this proceeds forward, to coming to you with his final site plan and conditional use permit, and shortly, as a part of the process, move to the preliminary subdivision and follow up with the final. So we are seeing a project approval. The subdivision process is going along in conjunction with the site plan process. So tonight you have two applications, conceptual subdivision, conceptual site plan. The first item is just so that you understand what's happening. The residential medium zone allows up to 8 units an acre. Mr. Balling would like to capitalize on the potential of that density. The proposal is 6 units on the property. It does involve the need for a lot line adjustment to the east with Garth, is it Hare or her? Garth Hare. And the idea of that would be a minor, a foot or two adjustment. It would incorporate the retaining wall system for that project into the site. And then along the northern property line, there would be additional acquisition of land from the LDS Church. And all of this is being done to get to the correct parcel size to ask for the 6 units. And so we bring that up into the report, is those lot line adjustments and any applicable rezones of those minor slivers needs to take place in order to meet the qualifiers to consider the 6 units as a density request under the CUP. I'm just going to highlight a few design issues, and then you can get to the detailed questions if you'd like. I think the foremost design later in the staff report is talking about potential issues of design and conditional use permit. As planners do best, we like to look at our streets as a corridor rather than a division line between uses. It's part of the community. And so 2 concepts that I bring up in the design parameters is simply that the plan for the elevations, or the orientation of the elevations, is that the rear side of the units would face 300 East Street. I won't pull up the elevations unless you want to talk about it specifically. I think there's some positives to the current elevation plan. I personally think the design of a ground floor level where you don't have doors, sliding glass windows, and ground level patios does address some of the concerns I've raised in the report with these areas become typically storage areas. And it's not a good or it's a bad, it's the issue of the presentation to the community. The front yard, or in this case a front street side yard, is part of the entrance into this community. And so I think that's a positive design to minimize the amount that the elevation provides opportunities for use as a storage area and allows it to function more as green space. We do have a semi-public yard space, if I call it, the balconies. They allow people to come out and enjoy the out of doors and the public streetscape as part of their internal environment to their units. I think that's a positive. But I think I bring up the two items to at least have a design discussion about. The first one is typically, if you were in the perfect ideal world, everybody's front door would be out to the street and the sidewalk in their front yard. And if you were in a really good planner perfect world, your garage wouldn't be the first wall elevation that you meet and greet off of the street. But we are an autocentric oriented society, and that is the typical design that you see. Truth be said, we don't have a lot of design issues from a administrative permitted use level. And that's something that's been on the agenda of whether we should pursue that. So I don't want to portray that these design ideas are automatics. I think they're places of negotiation and discussion. I think most of it I'm tying to is that the visual aesthetic place of a front yard area is important to the community from curb appeal. And I think under the conditional use, if we're going to pursue the 6 units rather than the permitted use, I think we should have this discussion about design of the yard spaces along 300 East. The typical way I tried to find some quick examples here in Centerville. I provided you the Florentine towns behind the Home Depot. Although it faces the Home Depot, the front yard, so there should be some disparity as whether that's my best front yard view if I'm living in the residential units. I still think it makes a nice presentation to the street as a multifamily project for Centerville, even along that heavy use arterial road. Again, it's a debatable issue living there next to a large box development. Under the suspicion of this design plan, Mr. Balling is probably not going to choose that kind of perspective where we put the sidewalks and the front porches out into the driveway. And I really honestly don't have a concrete standard to tell you that that's the only way to design it. So I brought up the Chase Lane. It's more of a side yard in that case. But there's a number of developments where we can buffer now that rear yard area and use the rear yard area as a private space in this development, but along the edges of the public infrastructure like the sidewalk and the park strip, we could use the landscaping design to create a slight visual buffer so the experiences of walking down the street have somewhat of a separation of the experiences of the backyard. Does it have to be extremely intensive? I don't think so. My favorite design is, I was going to give you, it's in the commercial area, the In-N-Out Burger landscape wall. It's very short. It does a fantastic job, though, screening that large parking lot from a walkability standpoint. So here we got this barren, large asphalt parking area, and that landscape wall with the landscaping does a great job as you drive down that street as well as when you walk down that street. So that's my intended design issue, to have a discussion. I think there's room under the conditional use permit to have that kind of discussion and have that with the applicant. And I think that's a positive benefit in the current configuration. The other element I bring up, and it wasn't really foreseen initially till you start rolling up your sleeves, we have the 60-40, 40% landscaping or impervious, 60% coverage. We're at 35 right now, according to the calculations, so we fall 5% short in that manner. And the other design issue is around parking and circulation. The major detail there, and we've had this discussion with Mr. Bowling, is the trash receptacle in this layout. Certainly you don't want to place trash receptacles near the front doors of the units. That wouldn't be the most desirable. In that discussion, he talked to A1 Service or A1 Disposal, and they acknowledged they have these type of situations and felt comfortable with its location. But I did bring up the code requirement when I pulled up all of our parking ordinances, and we do prohibit backing out onto a public street from a parking lot area. So I think that's, although it seems like a minor thing about a dumpster, it's a major thing potentially in the layout and configuration. We have to have that discussion. The other one is typically the angled parking would have a lane that leads you around the building and to the other street, a one-way road typically you would see. Mr. Bowling's intention is to honor a long-time commitment not to put an access out on 300 East. There's no technical prohibition to that from a standpoint, but it's something that he has had a long-standing commitment to from days gone by to eliminate accesses on 300 North. He did provide a radius turnaround for those stalls. So
You mean 300 East?
for the east stalls, the angled stalls, how they back out in the requirements, he shows you the engineering diagram to allow that back out area. So that seems to function for the angled parking. And there's a wide enough area to make that maneuvering. The other one we bring up, I think it's a secondary issue, but it is an issue of convenience. What is it Unit 3's and Unit 4's parking. Unit 4 has going into the garage, then coming back out, and then making a 2-3 point turn to get back out. Might be a little constrained, and I'm simply pointing that out from not wanting people to hit the garage doors on the side of the garage doors when they come in and out. The other unit has just a little longer back out space, but I just raise it as a design issue to, we want to look out for trying to accomplish the best circulation design that we can. So with those major points, unless you have specific questions, I think it shows how we can develop the property. I believe with some tweaks and some design discussions with the commission, Mr. Bowling can go back and prepare a final site plan and address some of the issues that maybe staff raised as an early idea or any that you might have. And then he will obviously come back with the CUP for the density. So our recommendation is to allow the conceptual to be accepted with feedback and come back with final plans.
Thank you, Corey. The dumpster, that's the black box right there,
Yeah.
right? Does A1 not have, I know in Salt Lake, for example, in some of the commercial areas, they have trucks that can back into those and they actually pick up the dumpsters from the back end. That would alleviate the the backing onto the street. It's,
Yeah, that's true.
I,
I don't know if A1 does or not. I think he can.
I know, I saw the letter that said that they could service it, but,
Yeah, it's the issue of answering this backing onto the street issue that the code talks about. But I agree with the idea that it's a little bit tough in this configuration because you don't want to locate the dumpster at the front doors of units either,
Right.
so. But I have to tell you what the code requires too.
other questions for Corey? Okay. Invite Mr. Dowling to come forward at this time and give us your thoughts on the staff report, some of the things that Corey has highlighted, and we may have some questions for you.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the very thorough staff report. And I'd like to just to go down the list of some of the items that are on the staff report, and I'm starting on that page where he's got all of this page. And if it's all right, since receiving that, I've made some additional notes that I'd like to share with you. And I've got, you guys have, your numbers are growing here. So I've only got 6 copies. If it's all right, if I could just spread them out among you and you could look at
Sure.
them, and then we can talk about some of these things.
Yeah, we can share. Thanks.
I'll just start at the top. The maximum height, 4 of these units are Rambler type, and 2 of them are 2-story. Unit 2 has the highest height, and from the finished grade to the top of the roof is 32 feet. Okay, and it's lower than the existing building that we'll be replacing there. So we should be good on that. I might mention the area on this site. I think I mentioned this last time. I came with a plan of putting a 3-plex on the properties to the north about 8 or 10 years ago. And the residents along 300 East were very much opposed to that idea. They wanted me to have all of my access coming off Pages Lane away from the elementary school. And so, you know, that was not possible at the time with my business. And so we put off until this point where we can do that and meet the desires of the residents on there. Before we went to rezone, I gave copies of this plan to everybody within 500 or 600 feet of the site, asked for their input, invited them to the public hearing on the rezone. And the only objection I've had is they just wanted me to have all the access off Pages Lane. So that's what we've tried to accommodate on this. Okay. The 40% site, and I'm at 35.8, and I'm actually a little higher. Since computing that, if you looked along those visitor parking, I've added, it looks like you can see 4 triangle portions in front of each one of them parking stalls, and my desire would be to convert those to landscaping and put some buffer trees between me and the resident to the east. So I'm a little higher, but I'm still under the 40%. You can see that I've also have 4 nice sized patios on the north side. Those are all at least 10 by 12 foot. Now, if I had to meet the 40%, I can certainly decrease those in size. But I would prefer that you let me upgrade these and put some nice patios on there and maybe hit me up with a little more landscaping requirements, more trees, more shrubs, things like that. And I think we'd end up with a nicer project. I might mention my agreement, my proposal with the church that is, you know, they've approved it on the local level and it's gone to Salt Lake, is we would be picking up about 4 feet of land there, and part of that agreement is we would be required to put a nice masonry wall along that boundary I don't know if you've seen the property, but I have a fairly nice masonry wall all along the east side. And we would probably match that type of design so that, you know, the two interior boundaries of this property are all completely walled in and make that look nice. Okay?
Just a quick question on the property that you're acquiring along the north there. Is that part of the existing parking lot, or is that just surplus ground that the church has beyond?
Well, you know, the church has, a real nice, I don't know what you call it, a field, grass field.
Okay.
I'm not, you can see I'm jogging it in the north corner there around the parking lot.
Okay.
So and our wall will have to do likewise, and you can see unit 6 is staggered to maintain the setback distance on that.
So it's just picking up that grass.
It's just, yeah, you can see it on the picture there. It's just, they've got a nice row of trees on the other side of that. Those trees are set back off of the current property line about 12 feet. And so we would be acquiring 4 feet of that property. That's our hopes, okay? And so that's what I'd like to do. I'm all right with the 1 tree, 2 shrubs. That seems a little small, but when we come back for final approvals and all that, we'll provide you a fine landscaping plan that's done by a landscape architect and look nice, and we'll show that we can make that look nice. Okay. The question concerning, let me just, I think if you looked at this, you can see how we propose to get vehicles out of the visitor parking. Each one of these units has an enclosed 2-car garage. And then in addition, we have 4 additional visitor parking off-site. And you can see how I've shown a vehicle could possibly, and there's plenty of room to spare that we could get it. That radius on that, 15.3 feet, I even took my F-150 pickup truck and measured the radius in the parking lot of what you can back up, and it's about 12 and a half. So, you know, we could easily get into those. I've shown you how you could get the vehicle out of the most difficult one in Unit 4 and then pull forward. Unit 3 is probably the most difficult, and they would have to back out until they're in front of Unit 6 and then go forward out on the road. And that's really not that big of a stretch. You know, I live on a single-family lot, and I back out about the same distance onto the road before I can go forward, you know. And so I really don't see that as a problem. All the vehicles will pull onto Page's Lane in the forward position, okay? And I hope we've addressed that concern. As far as the dumpster goes, you know, when we talked to the city, we looked at an option of even doing away with the dumpster and putting, and just purchasing city garbage cans and providing a place within the garages. And that's what I did on my other project I had up in Farmington, and it works well up there. But the problem we have here is you can imagine that if I have a garbage can and a recycling can, and then I bring them all out and line them up on Page's Lane for pickup, all 12 of them, and then we get an east wind. And you can imagine the fiasco that we had. So it just, you know, the dumpster just seems like a better way of making this work here. What I would propose to do is this dumpster is completely enclosed, 6-foot masonry wall, and I believe we gave you details of that when we submitted the plan. But in addition to that, to hide that dumpster so it is in a place that, you know, we would like to beautify somehow, but I'd like to keep it away from the front doors of all the units. But what we'd like to do, and this is what I've shown on this drawing, is in that landscaping area, I'd like to put a ground level sign that's maybe 3 feet high. I've shown detail of that in elevation on the next one, and put just, you know, like with some berming and trees behind that, such that I can hide that dumpster the best I can from the street view. And that's what I'd like to do there. I hope that, I haven't shown the dumpster on that next. I'm not that good at drafting. But that's the plan that I would like to follow along that, okay? I've given you a copy of that A1 letter if you haven't seen that. And so you can review that. They mentioned that they have these type of pickup all in several other locations, and their drivers are really good. And we would hope that we could allow them to pick it up like that. When they pick it up, they will be completely behind the sidewalk. And we would hope that we can, they told us we could schedule that to be picked up in off-peak hours, maybe when all the kids are in classrooms and not during recess times. And I can schedule that with them so that they pick it up when Pages Lane is not busy and we don't have elementary kids coming and going from the school. So that's what we're hoping to do there. And then the items on the appeal from 300 East. Man, I like the ideas that Kelly has that Corey sent to me. That first one really doesn't work well because, we want to have our front doors on the inside of the property where our visitor parking is and where they have all of their access. And so you're right, this second enhanced rear elevations would be more appealing to us. And I think we can even do, I looked at that one there, I think there's some down Pages Lane at Country Station that I think even look better, that are rear elevations. And so what I've shown here, if you look on the plan there, I've added just a fence wall combination with some wall pillars with fences in between. We would hope they would be like an open fence. If you look at it in the elevation view on the second page, you can see how I've shown that along there, that we'll just stagger that in and out and put landscaping amongst that and make it, I think something like that would look very, very nice and be similar to what they've got on Country Station. And I'd be more than happy to do that. We want them to have it look nice. I really don't think there's a problem on the back of these homes with residents with their garbage and storage and things like that, because all of the area from the units to the road, all of the landscape areas within this site, as well as the driveways, are common area. And we have control of that through the homeowners association. If somebody's too messy, they're going to clean up because they're going to have 5 other residents breathing down their neck. And it's just not going to be an issue. We've tried to make that appealing from the road. You see we've got 2 balconies with gable roofs out over the top of those. We've added a dormer roof over one of those garages. Three or more types of hardy board finishes that will look appealing. We're trying to get a craftsman type design. This works a lot better than this because we have exposed windows in the basements, that we want to have some light go into the basements around there. We really can't fit the courtyard thing because the doors are not on this side, and we have those exposed basement windows. But we can do like you had on this enhanced rear elevation design, and that would be our intentions. I hope that answers all the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Valley.
Mr. Chair, if I could just do a couple follow-up comments on the design issues talking about. I think the first thing we need probably sit down with the applicant when they prepare their final plans. When we think of landscaping, you're thinking of the trees and the grass, but there are the decorative hard surface and things of that type that you can use up to 20% in your calculation. So we probably ought to have the discussion of where the angled parking stalls are, adding that in, calculating the patios, and squaring up that number to find out where we're truly at. So I think that's something we can, further explore on the final design plans. I did pull up the zoning code on the backing out. This is the struggle where you get very specific with codes and then it comes and gets you in another area. So I think that's just something we need to look at and the meaning of the backing out issue, because it's talking about parking lots. We'll just have to work through that, system and see if there's a way to recommend something that would work if this is the direction you want us to pursue. So I think it's open to still talk about.
You know, if worse came to worse on that, we can have him, you know, we can schedule him to come when we don't have visitors parked there, and he can pick up the dumpster and then pull up into the site and do a 3-point turn and come out.
And that may be part of the conditional
And
use
that might
review.
be, you know, if that's what we have to do, we'll do that. But, you know, I'd like to explore options.
And it might be worth talking to A1 about whether they have any trucks that can do a rear
I've never
pickup.
heard of that, but I'll ask them.
Yeah. I know they have them because they do it in front of my office every day. Usually block the driveway when I'm going to work.
You know, I can see they'd probably have to stop on the road before they back in, though.
And that's true, you know, and so that's, I'm not sure which is worse.
Yeah.
But I think that's what we can talk about, and that's a great idea, suggestion, is we do have a conditional use permit. Maybe we'll talk about what kind of things that can control it so that there isn't any backing out. That's not
Thank you
great
very
English,
much.
but it worked.
Other questions for the applicant? Appreciate that presentation.
Thank you.
Very helpful. This matter's been scheduled for a public hearing. Would invite anyone who would like to speak to this to come forward at this time. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Further questions for the applicant or staff from the commissioners? All right.
Corey, sorry, I have a question. Corey, you said you looked up the code for the backing out on the street. What does it say?
Right here, backing space, read to you. Backing space. Each parking lot shall include required backing space within the lot or parcel, so a vehicle will not exit by backing out onto the public street. A public sidewalk shall not be used as part of the required backing area for the parking lot. Separate one-way exits provided angle parking and one-way parking. I think we solved the latter end with the one-way. It's this backing out that we need to just maybe figure out the best way to prevent that from happening.
And I would say too, I mean, usually you can make things work, but with it being right next to an elementary school, I feel like we should follow the ordinance and err on the side of being extra cautious.
Yeah, and it's the backing out part that
Is
we need to.
And I agree with that. I think that, you know, this nice letter from A1, I basically say our drivers are great drivers. And I agree. I mean, I don't have any reason to disagree with them on that couldn't do it, but I think that the intent of some of that stuff is safety, right? And especially with the school right there, we want to make sure that we're giving every opportunity for safe entering and exiting of Pages Lane, so.
I really appreciate the thought behind the placement, though, and trying to screen it and to really make it look nice and to fit the neighborhood. I mean, I wanted to acknowledge that's a great thought.
Can I just respond to that question? You know, maybe
Why don't you come up to the mic if you could, please, so we can get you on the record.
Maybe what I need to do is talk to A1 again and see if they can back up on the site, give them the configuration, see if they can pull in, load that, and go back in the parking lot and turn around and pull out forward.
Sure.
You know, so why don't I just talk to them about that and see if they'll write another letter?
Perfect.
Okay?
Good work. Thank you. Other questions for applicant or staff? There are two parts to what we're considering tonight. The first is the conceptual site plan itself and the staff recommendations and reasons, and then also the conceptual subdivision plan and staff recommendations and reasons. We'll take the first one first, the conceptual site plan. Chair will entertain a motion.
I hereby make a motion for the Planning Commission to accept the conceptual site plan for the Cottage on the Corner Townhomes project to be located on property at 325 East Pages Lane with directives 1 through 5, including subparts in the staff report for suggested reasons A through C.
I second that.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion or debate? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
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 Thank you. We'll then move to the second item, which is the conceptual subdivision plan. Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion for the Planning Commission to accept the conceptual subdivision plan for the Cottage on the Corner Townhomes project to be located on property at 325 East Pages Lane, with the directives 1 and 2 as listed in staff report and the suggested reasons for the action A through D.
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or debate? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take the vote, starting with Commissioner Helgeson.
Aye.
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 Passes.
Mr.
Thank
Chair,
you.
if I can just make a comment overall, it's nice, tonight, I don't know if it's December or what it is, but, everybody participating in this process has been really great to work with, so I appreciate all the considerations that everybody's been doing.
As well as your patience with the city and everything.
I think it helps that we've seen these projects before, basically. so-
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
We've struggled with this one before. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Ray subdivision, 233 South, 1st East. This is a consideration of proposed preliminary and final subdivision plan for the Ray subdivision on property located at 233 South, 1st East, for purpose of creating 3 residential building lots. Lance Evans, property owner and applicant. Staff.
Okay, great. I will try to keep this short and sweet. Mr. Evans wants to subdivide his property into 3 lots, which he's allowed to do in current zoning. You guys approved the conceptual plan last month, and there weren't too many conditions on that plan. The biggest issue was the buildable area of building, in lot 3, because that is the smallest lot in the subdivision. There was a little bit of concern about the minimum building pad area, which is 2,000 square feet. It is 2386, so it fits the minimum requirement, and then all of the other ones are much more than that, so there's really no concern about those building pads on the other lots. So that was addressed, and that was really the biggest issue that the commission seemed to find. The public utility easements have been marked on the plan. The fire marshal has sent a letter with some conditions. The fire hydrant is across the street currently, so it's certainly close enough. And then if there's any future structures, they'll need to provide access, which doesn't feel like it will be a problem. Drainage and construction plans have been submitted, and the city engineer stated that the soil reports wouldn't be necessary for this plan since there's already an existing home on the property. It didn't feel necessary, and then all of the letters from utility providers have also been submitted. So it seemed everything was taken care of, and I didn't find any further issues.
Thank you, Cassie. Questions for staff? Hearing none, invite the applicant to come forward at this time and make any comment that you'd like on the staff report. Maybe we'll have a few questions for you. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lance Evans. I don't have any questions. I think it's pretty straightforward, and I think hopefully we addressed all the issues. So,
Thank you,
any
Mr.
questions
Evans.
you guys have, I'd be happy to take.
How did you draw the short straw to get stuck last on the agenda?
I know, especially with this.
Clearly, don't. Corey doesn't like me. I don't know. He doesn't even know me that well, so it's.
But you must admit this is much more entertaining than The Voice or Dancing with the Stars, isn't it?
Yes, okay.
Okay.
Somebody
any
had to be
questions?
last, and I picked the nicest guy.
No choice.
Any questions for Mr. Evans? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
This matter's been scheduled for a public hearing. We'd invite anyone else to come forward at this time to speak, and seeing no one coming forward, we'll close the public hearing. Further discussion, questions for staff or the applicant? If not, Chair will entertain a motion.
I got it. I'll make a motion for the planning commission to recommend approval of the final subdivision plan and plot and plans for the Ray subdivision located at 233 South, 100 East, to the City Council with the directives 1 through 3 listed in the staff report and suggested reasons for action 1 through 5 as listed in the staff report.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or debate? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Evans.
Thanks for your patience.
Yes, especially for your patience. Now we turn to the most exciting part of our evening, the director's report.
How fast can we close out? The great news is you're off the rest of the month. So you get to wait till 2017. So enjoy your holiday times. And it's, my closing year statement is this commission's comprised of great people. We as staff have been blessed in Centerville for a long time with good people on the commission. So we're just grateful for every one of you and your input. You make our job, even though we can get intense, you make our job easy in the end because you're just great. And welcome to Kathy back. I remember the Walmart time period with her, and I asked her around the break, does bring back nightmares or positive things to come back? So
I don't sleep that well anyway, so.
So great. So you're off the rest of the month. Interform I put on there. I believe that it is likely that it'll be administrative approval, but I put it on there just in case it has to come back to you. We have other items that are looking to secure your next January 11th date, so I anticipate at least 3 items right now to be on your agenda for the 11th. And then just if you had questions on the council actions, you'll notice some long-standing things that have been hanging around for a while have been closed out. So
they denied the removing very high from that zone?
yeah, that was a request for us to consider it, and eventually in the end they chose to not take any action for now in that area.
And they repealed the flag law.
Yeah, the flag lot was repealed, but the caveat was is they would like this coming short duration in the next following year to maybe readdress some of their concerns. So it's not off the table, it's just delayed.
Well, it's actually repealed, so there are no flag lots right now.
Well, yeah,
Any new ones?
it's off the table permanently. It's off the table, you're right, but for potentially a short duration.
In other words, they'd like us to redraft the ordinance.
Mhm.
Okay. And then the southeast neighborhood plan, they'd also like us to put that on near the top of our agenda for next year as well, is that?
Yes, and tentative schedule is your second meeting in January to bring some of those revisions. How that will be split out is we're looking at the residential components and the density components of that southeast plan, but that neighborhood has a significant area called the Pages Lane Commercial. So the tentative plan is to address half of it. Early in January or early February, I'm looking at the second meeting in January, to talk about what would be coined as maybe some edits and some clarifications of the plan. Then once the commission has engaged the public and made a recommendation on those edits, as part of forwarding your recommendation on a phased part of the plan, you would meet with them, express your decisions and what you heard about those edits and why you made the recommendation. But that then would be the joint session where they said they wanted to meet with you again. That's the work session you could share where you are with the edits and what you decided, and then we would then go further and talk about the additional areas, particularly Pages Lane and what to do there. And then the first half would go up to them for review, and we would start the second half of that neighborhood plan addressing Pages Lane and some other issues in that plan.
Okay, good. Well, very good. And Corey, I know we've said this before, but we really appreciate the staff's support of this commission. You guys have been great. We've been blessed by having good staff, and as I've mentioned before, having attended other planning commission meetings and seeing the somewhat interesting and ad hoc ways they handle things, it's really nice to have it laid out. And even though we debate and we disagree from time to time, it's just good to have all the facts laid out, and you do a very good job. Both of them.
Well, thank you, and I don't want you to rubber stamp anything from staff. That gets scary. But what you don't see is that on report day, Lisa has this wood paddle with holes in it. And I go to her office and find out how well we did the reports. No, it's...
And staff includes Lisa, because without you, we would all probably be in jail.
We did actually feel a little bit lost when you were gone last month. And it's
We're like,
we did. It's like, what do we do? I don't know. Let's be safe. Okay.
Yeah, let's be.
I watched the video.
And we will say that we're all very excited about your next, maybe you could. Training or
Yes.
something, and maybe pictures, slideshow that we can see, because that sounds like a pretty amazing trip.
Yeah, it was a really good trip.
Like to see that. Well, thank you all. Did I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?